is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unscrupled, covering Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Season 5, Episode 16, The Body. In this episode, the boss comes in to check up on things and be completely crushed by this episode of television. Welcome to Unscrupled.
Hey guys.
Hey there.
Hey guys.
Hey, who the fuck is that?
I don't know. My name is Money.
My name is Bitches.
And who's that on the line?
I'm Cakes.
Yes, this is a thing we do, guys, where our guests have to go by their vice. So, Natasha is definitely Cake, and that would make Mocha Blow, and Gwen is Carbs. So,
Nice.
Poor Gwen.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you guys figured that one out for me ahead of time, because I don't know what I would have said. There's so many vices to choose from.
yes. Well, I mean, you've said your Game of Thrones sigil is a cupcake, and also
That's true.
You're doing the gluten-free thing, so
Oh,
yeah.
the poor darling.
I hate it.
I feel ya.
Hey guys, can you feel like we want to talk about anything else today?
We could do, I feel like Natasha and I could do an entire show just bitching about how much we miss bagels.
There's, do you know what I miss? I miss just being able to get a sandwich anywhere.
Yeah.
Just anywhere. That's really the thing. Let's talk about gluten. How about that? Let's just do that for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is the Unspoiled Network, and I feel like Unspoiled is taking a really weird, dark meaning this time, as the Unspoiled host has 2 living parents, and the other 2 do not.
Yeah.
Whoops.
So, yeah, I guess we're going to talk about grief and how things work, and you have the IMDb page up, right, bitches?
Sure I do.
Okay, go get that up.
Surprise.
So, yeah, I don't cry at television, but I definitely teared up here because this was really affecting, and like the silence of throughout the entire episode was just really getting to me. The pure lack of any background noise whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what I find to be... there's a lot of different cases in which I have felt using silence was like the only choice for the effect to be what it wound up being. And I think this whole episode, not just the silence overall, but the use of sound when it is used, is just... it really captures that detached feeling of unreality, and it just kills me. Like, I'm really glad that I got up in here and got to be a guest on this episode, because I realized, like, oh, they're getting close to that. Oh, shit, because it's a popular one. I wonder if somebody has taken it already.
Yeah.
Even if they had, we would have bumped them for you. I don't care.
Yeah,
who it is.
you have.
You've got dibs.
Yeah.
Whee! I'm so fancy.
The power.
Yeah, this is the first time also that I've watched this episode since my dad died.
Oh.
So this was like a real rough one. I intended to watch it last night because I knew that you all, we share a Hulu account. Ooh, don't come after me, Hulu, please. And
well, if Hulu was listening, they would have stopped. Like, we complain about the spoilers a lot, and they still haven't done anything about it. So.
Oh, I hate that. HBO Now is doing that sometimes too to me, though.
Oh yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, the last night Owen was home and I wanted company while I watched this, and but it was really late by the time I got done recording, and he was having to get up at like the ass crack of dawn. So I finally was like, all right, I'm just going to get up early and watch it. And although I kind of had wanted the company, I wound up being glad I was alone because I was sobbing so out of control that I think it would just have alarmed him. So, you know, there comes a point where there's nothing a person can do. You just have to, like, let it go. And there were just a couple points in this that I found this episode incredibly affecting and powerful. Before my dad ever died, it still manages to do that. But after, there's so much that just you see in a different light, or things that you've thought of since then that he somehow, like, punctuates here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just, it was rough.
Yeah, it's kind of like feeling it again for the first time. That moment when you find out and it all kind of crashes into you. It's this episode is the closest thing I've ever seen to it explaining what this feels like. Mm-hmm. And yeah. So, because you lost your dad, I lost my mom. I lost my mom before this episode aired. So when I saw it the first time, I was a wreck. Oh my God.
Bitches, we have to talk about the timeline of you seeing it, because I know you were in Afghanistan when this aired.
No, I was not in Afghanistan.
Oh God, and this was like early 2002? Like just a couple months after you lost your mom?
No, my mom died in, at the very end of August 2001. And I was stationed in Japan when that happened, and this episode actually aired in 2001, but I wasn't watching Buffy then. Not yet. I was still in the Navy. Buffy happened when I left the Navy. So it was interesting, but this episode aired before Mom died, but I didn't experience it as it happened. But I did, because there was shit going on. It was a whole different time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I did see it maybe a year after my mom died, and yeah. And Mom's death was so fucking surreal anyway. Like, I didn't need TV to make it weirder. Well, because, you know, we knew it was coming. She had cancer. It just happened very quickly. She had 3 months, and then I'm in Japan, doing my in the Navy thing, and I get this call, and I knew I was going to get the call eventually, and I somehow knew it was coming that day. Like I had said to my friend that I worked with the day before, it's like, you know what? I think my mom's dying right now. And she's like, oh, you're just worried. Everything's fine. Don't be like that. And, you know, I get this call from my brother, and he tells me, and I sob for a while, and then I put my uniform on and I go to work, because that's what you do. And I show up for her to drive me to work, because we were buddies like that. And she just looks at my face and she's like, "Oh my God, you were right, weren't you?" And it's like, Yep.
Our guts know things.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes you have a connection with a parent that transcends distance. So, yeah, and I went to work that day until I got my Amcross orders, and then I, got my shit on a plane and went home. And then 2 weeks later, we were at war. It was a weird time.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. You know what it's like to miss ship's movement for your mom's funeral? Nope, no one does. It's weird.
Wow. So, yeah, like, this has been, like, I've mentioned before that the fact that Joyce dies was spoiled for me about a year ago. And I think it honestly made it worse for me for this season, like, watching her get sick and knowing that was the answer at the end. Especially since we've spent so much time, I won't shut up about it, but the comparison I make for Buffy and Joyce's relationship is I had 2 classmates in high school who had cystic fibrosis. And, like, it's just, back then, lifespan is not beyond your 20s.
Yikes.
And so they'd had conversations with their parents about like what their life is going to look like, and just, you know, it's hard enough for a parent to accept that they're going to outlive their kid. But yeah, Buffy is in a situation where Slayers don't live very long. Like, how many of them make it to 20?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think Buffy had ever prepared for a world without Joyce. And it also breaks my heart that Joyce is probably mentally prepared for a world without Buffy.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's not
and
what
it's so
happens.
bizarre now with, like, Dawn being added to the equation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of the thought process of Joyce, as far as she knows, Dawn has been there. So it's not really...
Well, she knows it's not real, but it's also, it feels real to her, and so It doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah, and that adds another layer to everything that happens here too, because of what Buffy has to deal with telling Dawn, whereas if Dawn were not around, she would be alone in this, but there's still a sense of loneliness, because she is now like the grown-up.
Right. She doesn't have to be strong for her little sister if she's the only one. And it's like, I haven't always been big on Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting, but this is actually really good, the way she conveys like how she wants to break down but she can't, and there's like, she's holding it together just for Dawn.
She doesn't cry throughout the entire episode.
That this time resonated with me so much.
Yeah.
Because when I found out that my dad died, I couldn't cry. I couldn't do it. It was like, there was an immediate kind of panic cry when I found out, because I woke up and saw that my brother had called me like 7 times, and he never calls me. There's one reason why that's happened. Mm-hmm. So I kind of knew, and I listened to the voicemail and flipped out. And then as soon as, like, maybe 3 minutes of flipping out, and then it was just numbness and nothing.
Yep.
And the way that Buffy walks around in silence in her house, and the only, like, real reaction that you get initially is her throwing up.
Uh-huh.
At that, like, visceral, and it's just these chimes in the background, the wind chimes, and she throws up and, like, walks in this sort of trance to the kitchen door and looks outside like she's like, the world doesn't still exist, right?
Yeah, it's like...
Because it's over now.
Yeah. Everything's over. The entire world is gone, except that it's not. It's out there, and it seems obscene.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is something that Rashawn and I said on some podcast. I don't know which one we were doing, but I was saying that the idea that you can die and the world just keeps going on as it always does after you're gone just seems really rude. Like, that's not how it should be at all. What? It should just, I'm gone. It's done now. World over.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Put it away. It's just, it has no purpose now. But yeah, that's not how things work. And yeah, just, God, poor Buffy. They did...
Even the moment where she puts the paper towel on the vomit and just stands there, like, staring as it, like, soaks through.
Yeah.
Just, like, things like that where she's just, I'm gonna clean it up now. Like, that's what you do. I need to do something.
Yeah.
That's the thing to do, because she can't, she's just standing there waiting for the paramedics, you know?
And then the coroner, and then waiting for Giles, and then waiting.
Yep.
It's interesting because I had a lot more time and brain space to analyze it this time. And they do this interesting thing with words where she's on the phone with the 911 lady who's trying to tell her what to do. And halfway through, like, she tries to give her mom CPR, and then she gets back on the phone and is like, I think I broke something. And the woman says it for the first time. She says, is the body cold? And Buffy completely negates it. She's like, no, it's my mom. It's my mom. She's not breathing. Like, totally taking the idea that this is a body and not a person, and just like, no, that's not where we're at. And just refusing it outright. And she can't get there until later on when she's talking to Giles and she tells him we can't move the body. And then all of a sudden, it's a body and not her mom.
And she looks so horrified that she actually said that shit out loud.
Yeah, like that's
the point where she actually cries a little.
Yeah, like her saying it made it so. And yeah, she loses it. And she's right too.
And they just had to repeat the last 4 seconds of the last episode.
Oh, the previous episode.
That hit me just as hard the second time.
Yeah.
Because I have to watch her, like, process, like, this is my mom, and I need you right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Dark Tower, there was an episode last month where an important character dies, and it was done really, really well. That book is mostly trash, but that chapter was done well.
Good.
And
something was done well in it.
Honestly, when I just cling so much to the things that were done properly because I just need something to explain why people like this series. But this was like, I quoted her moment here of mommy, and just like, I can't do it. The first time I watched it, the episode ends and there's no theme music after with the previous episode, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it just go to silence? Yeah. Ugh, so rude.
Yeah, they really dropped us off a fucking cliff there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, there's just no fucking excuse for that, Joss.
The makeup it was haunting too, because like it's hard to make an actor look actually dead. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think 6 Feet Under ever really did it. I mean, they looked like a dead person would, but they don't look like there used to be a person there. It's just a body, you know?
Right. Well, it's different when, like, okay, so with 6 Feet Under, we'd get little snippets of the person, but it's not like someone we knew. It's not like Joyce, because Joyce wasn't just Buffy's mom. She was all our mom. She's like the mom we wanted. Internet,
I need everyone to raise their middle finger to bitches right now, because last night we were playing Jackbox, and she picked her name as Joyce.
Oh, mean.
I'm a terrible person.
I was way too high for that, bitches. That was not okay.
Yeah, I'm just a really terrible person, and I've accepted that about myself, and y'all need to just get on board. So I can't. Yeah. Oh, I was going to change the topic, so I want to talk about the lighting that they did. Everything was just a little bit overexposed. And and everything was a little too bright. And again, with me noticing, like, taking more time to notice stuff, Buffy's pupils were so dilated in almost every episode, or every scene of this. There were only a couple of scenes where her pupils weren't the size of dimes. And
I didn't notice that.
Oh, I look at pupils.
Yeah, I noticed it too. It's a very subtle thing that it's just like she's not focusing. She's not.
Well, she's in shock. That's a sign of shock. That's a medical thing. And I don't know what the fuck they did to Sarah Michelle Gellar, poor woman, in order to get that reaction out of her. Maybe there's a chemical, but holy crap. Maybe she's just so good that she could do that to her eyes. But
I think it's probably contacts.
I don't know, because they changed size. They changed size throughout.
They could have several different versions. I mean, like...
No, I mean during the course of a scene. They would be really big, but they would fluctuate. Like actual eyes do.
Okay. I mean, maybe they dilated her eyes? That seems cruel.
Yeah, just a little bit. Or maybe she's a great actor and maybe she's method and she put herself into a state of shock. But holy crap, those pupils.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even notice that. I'm going to have to see. Well, I'm acting like I'm going to go rewatch this episode. I'm not doing that.
No. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to watch this episode again. And I'm kind of.
Oh, I watch it every few years when I need to process something that's about death. I'll watch this and remind myself that I'm not alone. That this is a shared experience that everybody has, and here's some evidence of that thing, and that it's not inappropriate for me to have grief, and that I get to have that, because we don't always give ourselves permission for that, especially if we're very repressed the way I am. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have an artifact of human feeling that I can just go to and remind myself that it's okay. I'm allowed to have these feelings. People have them.
Mm. Yeah, it's I totally get what you mean with that, because that's something that, like, I just have trouble with. I mean, I didn't cry around people, like, at the funeral. I don't trust people enough to be vulnerable around them.
Right.
So it was hard, and the only times that I ever found myself able to grieve were when I was alone. And even then, it could be really tough. And I think that it's something that I've, like, come to realize, because at this point, my dad's been dead, like, 4 years. And it's worse now than it was then. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I know I keep using the word rude, but it really is. Like, how grief is just so fucking uncaring about where you are in your life and how much time has passed. And people say it will get easier with time, and maybe
no, it doesn't.
For some people it does.
No, it never gets easier. You just get better at carrying it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And so, yeah, I think that, and I really like this episode's, like, the fact that a lot of it is taking place in real time. Her waiting for the ambulance, for the coroner, you sit with her while she's waiting. And in the room where the coroner has taken a look and is walking, like, we are with him as he finishes up and turns out the light and puts down his clipboard and puts on his coat and walks to the front. Every moment of it is so drawn out just to show how things are just gonna keep on going, and it's gonna feel like a fucking eternity.
Mm-hmm. And our media is not good at how death happens. It's like, on Law and Order, it's like, oh, look, there's a body. And then you flash to the coroner who gives you information. And then, like, when they're dealing with death in a more, like, sometimes someone will pull up to their house and there's police lights, right?
Right.
It doesn't ever let you sit with, oh, there is a dead body in your house that used to be someone you love.
Yeah, that's something that I've always had problems with in police procedurals, is, like, not only the way they deal with it, but also how the family members tend to react when the news is delivered, and they're, like, so collected and can answer all these questions, and I'm like, no, if this were me getting this news, they would have to leave for a minute, and you can come back later. Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand this is important to your case. Go fuck yourself. Give me a second.
Yeah. They really, those other shows just don't dwell on the mundane things that still need to happen, even though the world has stopped. And they don't acknowledge that for some people, the world just fucking stopped, and they can't function with you right now. They're not with you.
And I mean, I get that those shows they're not focused on that. The whole thing, the body is a plot point for shows like that. And that's, like, I get that, but it can feel a little bit unreal.
Well, it's also, I thought about this when Anya wouldn't shut up. And, our society really kind of sanitizes death.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
And it made me wonder from Anya's perspective in that when she was last time she was human being, like, you see dead bodies all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a thing you deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like we don't have a system set up to pull everything behind the curtain and kind of sugarcoat it for the rest of the world. And yeah, and so where was I going with this? This is a hard episode to talk about.
It feels like Anya forgot.
I mean, Anya's clearly
is.
dealing with her own shit, though.
Well, yeah.
It's like, and I feel that, like, Anya's coming to terms with what it means to be mortal again, because she hasn't been mortal in a while. And also, she doesn't, like, life is more precious than it was back then, I guess. So, I mean, I'm assuming she was a peasant girl back in the day.
Yeah. They make it pretty clear from the dude she used to date that, yeah, she was fairly common, and yeah, so she probably did see death in her mortal life, but it wasn't. So it was probably a very different experience, and it was over 1,000 years ago. That's a long time. You can forget the things that really affected you back then.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, like, this is the first time I've really felt Anya as a part of the Scooby Gang, because she's genuinely like, what is supposed to happen now? Nobody knows. It's like, I don't know, what should they be doing? Should they be calling the funeral home? Should they be cleaning up the vomit? Should they be, I don't know, canceling Joyce's appointments? Should they be hiding pictures of her?
That's my favorite part, is when she's just like, well, what happens now? Are we going to see the body? And Willow's so horrified that she'd ask the question, but Willow does not have an answer.
Exactly.
And so, like, her asking the question, maybe it hasn't occurred to anybody else to ask. Or maybe it has. And they just haven't said that shit out loud. Which I think is more likely. We're going to the morgue. Are we going to see the body? Are we going to be in the room with the body? Like, I've never visited the morgue with a friend who's lost a family member. I would not know at all how that goes. And also, it kind of bothered me that once we get to the morgue, Dawn has to sneak in to see her mom. It bothered me a lot that when she asks, are we going to get to see her? Buffy's response was, Dawn, not now. Oh, really? Not now? Fucking when?
I mean,
you just got to, like, show up at her school and tell her mom is gone, and that's all she gets? She doesn't get a chance to, like, see her or be with her for a moment? That feels really wrong to me.
Okay,
I interpret it as that's later in the process, is, like, the body's being examined now. It's on this cold, ugly metal table. Like, we need to wheel it out into a viewing room.
There's that, and there's also the thing where they never cover, like, what religion they're supposed to be, because there are religions that allow for that, and there are those that do not. And there's also the thing where Buffy has just spent a lot of time with the body, and she has a very visceral reaction to it, and she kind of doesn't want Dawn to have to go through that. She wants Dawn to get to remember Joyce as this alive person. And so I
just feel like that's really not her choice to make.
Well, of course it isn't, but there's some part of Buffy that's taking over Mom Place now who wants to protect her. Yeah, and as we all know from having qualified. As we all know from having parents, sometimes their efforts to protect us are the worst possible thing they can do.
Right. But also, Buffy's not qualified. Buffy is 20 years old. Buffy cannot buy a beer.
Right.
And that's, like, I'm trying to remember how mature I was at 20. And could I deal with something of this magnitude? Like, I couldn't fucking deal with a speeding ticket. It's like, oh my god, I have to pay money I don't have, or I have to go to the courthouse and be an adult. And
I get what you guys are saying here, but it's not just Buffy. The doctor doesn't respond either.
Oh, well, children don't matter. in, like, hospitals or life at all. They have no say. They are not people. They are chattel for us to yell at and shove aside, and we, as a society, do not treat them as actual human beings.
All right.
That's a whole society thing, not just in case of death thing.
As the son of 2 doctors, I can say that's very, very true, but it's a lot more true for male doctors than it is for female.
I just, I guess I feel like he had to make it so that nobody was going to let her see Joyce, so that there had to be the scene where she goes in there and gets attacked. Which I'm not even, like, that mad at, because the first time that I watched this, that scene felt really out of place to me. But on the rewatch, I was just realizing how he's making the point that Buffy's just she's going through this horrific thing, and she still has to work. She still has to do this fucking thing that's just not going to stop just because she's going through some shit. It marches on, and it will pop up in really inconvenient moments. And, so I kind of actually wound up liking it the second time, whereas the first time I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, that's how I interpret it this time, the first time. Probably the only time I'm ever going to watch this, but...
Right.
Yeah, it's like Dawn still needs protecting, and vampires still need slaying, and your friends can take over patrol, but here's a fucking problem that only you are qualified to deal with, and you have to do it. And you can't stop because your mom is lying there. It's like, it felt like brushing your teeth or taking a shower or,
right,
paying your bills. It's like, here, I can't deal with this right now, but you have to deal with it right now.
I kind of saw it as like an oil change, where it's like really inconvenient, and, like just one of those things that you're just like, oh, I could just drive until my car just dies. Can't I just ignore it? Oh, yes, if you want, go ahead, ignore it. It's not going to help you.
Oh, man.
Can we talk about Willow's scene?
Yes.
Sure. I don't know how to process Willow's scene.
That shit was the one that made me lose my mind. Like, I really started crying during that one. And it's also incredibly annoying that Anya finds the blue thing that she was looking for and just stuffs it in a drawer. And Willow never knows that it's there. Because she's going to go back to her room and find it later and be like, how did I miss this? And it's not your fault, Willow.
I think afterwards she'll realize that it didn't actually matter and it was just her trying to cope and won't actually care about the sweater.
Hopefully.
Willow's pretty good.
I would be annoyed.
I got a lot of, Willow's grieving, but she has to be supportive. So she can't, she's trying real hard to do what other people need her to do and to be respectful. And she doesn't know how to do that, and she's kind of shoving her grief aside.
And I really liked the moment where, in general, she's just like, why is everything I own, for little kids? Why can't I dress like an adult?
I have been screaming that into a microphone for 2 years now. Why do you dress like a fucking cartoon character, Willow?
It's really, I think this is something that you just have a certain style, and it's not until you run into something you've never run into before that you realize literally nothing I own is appropriate here. When I started to work at the bank, that was my moment where I was like, oh, bank appropriate. I guess I'm going shopping.
Yeah,
because
these people
titties
are
out is not a good...
Titties out!
is not a good look for the teller in Texas, so...
Yeah, that's why I default to menswear. Fucking men. You have 3 outfits that are appropriate for just about any occasion. If it's a little bit classy to very classy, you could wear a button down and khakis and be appropriate. Meanwhile, we, in women's wear, you have to be okay, so how much, is cleavage appropriate? Is cleavage, emphatically not appropriate? Do I need a camisole? Is this a slip thing? Is this pantyhose level? What shoes do I wear? everything is coded for these like specific little micro slices of appropriateness. And if you step out of line even a little bit, you know everybody's judging you. Like, that shade 100%. Of lipstick is just a little bit too informal for this. It's like, meanwhile, there's Joe over there wearing the same khakis and button-down he wore to the picnic last week, and he's fine.
He's wearing a t-shirt with a suit printed on it.
And when you're heavy and you've got big tits, what is appropriate on someone else may not be appropriate on you.
Yeah.
Which is something that it took me a while to learn. I could wear the same shirt as friends of mine, and I had 4 inches of cleavage.
Yep.
But they didn't have any. So on me, it was like, this is supposed to be a uniform, but clearly that's not going to work here.
Right.
And it gets worse because I had a friend who was breastfeeding, so her breasts would change size during the course of a day. So what was totally appropriate in the morning, she's busting out of by lunch. and like she's getting flack from our manager saying like, you gotta put those away, girl. And she's like, they're 2 cups bigger than they were this morning. I need to go pump. What the fuck do you want from me?
Guys, don't have children. It's like, why does it work this way?
That really is what it boils down to in my mind.
Bodies are weird. And appropriateness of women's bodies is looked at with a fucking microscope, an electron microscope. And there are times when I have cursed my body for being so androgynous, but when it comes to formal wear, when I can just wear like menswear and everyone acknowledges that that's going to work better for me than women's wear because my body's so weird. Thank Christ, because I don't know what the hell I'd do if I had to figure out if I needed a fucking camisole today.
Oh, God. Clothing. I love you and I hate you.
I just hate it.
So after this episode, I'm never going to get over what they did with Joyce last season. Because
what happened? Remind me.
So it was Buffy in college, and we've acknowledged that there were a lot of mistakes in this season. But I feel like the biggest one is the fact that when Buffy comes home, Joyce has stashed a bunch of museum stuff in her room.
Oh, right.
And Joyce is just really not around. And like, bitches, you've said this is about her giving her daughter space, but I've been to your Aunt Mom's house when you're doing laundry. Like, she wants to cook for you. She wants to, like, do little things that are easy for you. She has a room that you could sleep if you're staying too late, and she'll give you a beer so you can't drive until later. Like...
Yeah, she does a lot to make sure that I stick around for a reasonable visit. But that's Aunt Mom.
Right.
But Joyce, okay, so my Aunt Mom and Joyce are a whole lot alike. Like, seriously, when I got my second mom, I picked the very best one. No kidding. And I feel you where the way they wrote it, Joyce wasn't desperate enough for some mother-daughter time.
Not desperate, just this is a big change. Buffy is now living somewhere else. That has never happened for Joyce. Joyce is alone in this fucking house. There was no Dawn at this point. And, yeah, like... Also...
This is something, like, in terms of who Joyce is as a character, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
In terms of a parent thing, this is what I went through. I came home from college, and my parents had sold the house and moved into separate one-bedrooms, and I had nowhere to go.
Really?
And my mom doesn't not care about me. My mom loves me, and I know it. But she was not doing a good job at showing that to me. And I had to figure shit out for myself and wound up moving in with my uncle because I had no place to go. I slept in the basement of where my dad was staying, which was a storage room. He was in the one-bedroom apartment at the back of a church that was meant for where the pastor would stay, except the pastor had his own house, so they would rent it out. So the room that I got to sleep in was not technically part of that apartment. It was down the stairs in the basement area of the church. and they had cleared a storage room out. But the storage room was 2 rooms, and they put everything that they had been storing in the front into the back one, gave me that space for a bed, and then anytime anyone needed anything, they'd have to go through the room that I was sleeping in to the back storage room to get it.
Ah.
And I came home from college, and that was where all my stuff was piled up in boxes, not even unpacked. And my dad was just like, yeah, I don't know, get a job, figure it out.
Wow. Okay.
And I had been gone 2 years, because I also went to boarding school in California for my senior year of college, or senior of high school.
Oh, wow.
So this I kind of expected after everything that had been going on in my family, that being home would be kind of a big deal, and it really just wasn't. And so in terms of who Joyce is, that doesn't feel right to me. But in terms of that being something that people go through when suddenly their parents are just like, well, yeah, I figure you got this now, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that is not unusual.
I feel like it would take longer than 2 months of her being out of the house to do that.
Maybe. But I maintain.
And I'm not speaking for your parents, Natasha. I'm talking about Joyce.
Well, that's my, I don't feel like that's how Joyce would handle it.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that.
But it's also,
yeah, I feel like they were just trying to have Buffy go through something that a lot of people have gone through, and they weren't really concerned with whether that was true of how Joyce would have behaved.
Right. And it's also because Joyce, just didn't really show up last season. And, this is one of the few times we see her, and her entire line is, oh, I had stuff from the museum I needed to store there. Mm-hmm. And it's especially finding out halfway through the season that she's not going to survive, which I kind of knew. This is a show where a lot of people die. Mm-hmm. And here is a parent character that is, kind of their safety net and their anchor. That person is probably going to be taken away. I did not, it hit me hard when she got sick, and I'm like, oh, we're not going to deal with a vampire thing.
Right.
We're not going to deal with some kind of spell. It's just, this is not Slayer shit that you can deal with.
Yeah, this is just real life, which you
there's no one to be mad at.
Mm-hmm.
He, as much as Xander wants there to be somebody that he can punch, there's just the wall.
But that was so real. Oh my god. Mm-hmm. There's always, when you're a group of people experiencing grief, there's always one or two people that just want someone to blame, as though that's gonna fix it. Yeah. And it doesn't fix anything. You just have all these emotions, and men in our society aren't allowed to have more than one of 4 emotions. I have a theory. Yeah. And most of the ones that they do experience get kind of shunted toward anger because it's an emotion they're allowed to have. They're not allowed to have fear or uncertainty or sadness, but they are allowed to be angry. That is a manly thing to do. Anger and violence, they can have that. So that's what they do. Yeah,
and Xander is better at dealing with toxic masculinity than most of his contemporaries on television.
Yes.
He's still not good at it, but...
Yeah.
I
appreciate him just standing there with his fist inside the wall going, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say I'm shocked Xander is still alive?
I completely understand that. I fully expected him to be dead by this point when I was watching.
I expected him to be dead in the second season. I'm like, this guy cannot last. He's comic relief. He's not really evolving. He's really annoying. We haven't seen a lot of him, and I think that makes him better in that he can only show up when he's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has kind of evolved though, in the first couple of seasons, looking at it through, 2016 through 18 eyes, we kind of peg him as a little bit of an incel. And, but then he grows up and he does stuff and he has experiences with women who want to talk to him and his penis. And, like, he lets a lot of that toxic crushiness go. And now he's, like, got a job and doing stuff. And yes, it helps that we don't see him all the time so they don't have to fill the time with his buffoonery. But also he has evolved a lot. And it's a lot easier to have him around without loathing every second of his screen time now.
I think Xander does have a skill that most white men take a long time to learn. And that's dealing with disappointment.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like, people don't realize, like, it's a real problem, especially in gay culture, too.
Yeah.
Like, getting your heart broken and dealing with disappointment. It feels like Xander has had a life where this has happened and he knows how to deal with it. And he's still a goober and not great, but it does make him miles better than his contemporaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one could say that maybe just being around the people that he's around and watching how fucking badly shit goes for a lot of people puts things into perspective for him after a while.
And he does lose his best friend on the first episode.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah. Okay, who haven't we talked about? We haven't talked about Tara.
Yeah. How about this? I didn't realize, this was the first time that she and Willow kiss in the show.
Was it?
Yeah, and they purposely, like, put it into this really touching, emotional moment between the two of them, and they did not advertise it the way that these things were often put in the forefront of, like, ads on TV. So when it happened, it was a big surprise, and apparently Joss Whedon had to go to the Met for them to let him air this. They wanted him to cut the kiss. And he straight up said, if you don't let me air this, I'm scrapping this whole episode. Like, that's something that I hadn't realized, just how we can have a lesbian relationship, but we can't though, but not really. So, although Joss is trash, kudos on that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a really different time. I mean, they weren't even acknowledging that Xena and Gabrielle were together at this point in the world, and
right,
like, it was. I tried to explain to the little queerlings that we're getting now how different the world used to be, and they cannot wrap their heads around the idea that two women sharing a kiss in grief would be seen as obscene. That kind of, like, just the fact that it's two people with vaginas sharing a moment.
It's not supposed to be titillating, which I think is what the real problem is for the censors, you know?
Yeah. It wasn't sexy in any way. It was a moment of saving a person from spiraling. And they hate it when women aren't there for them to consume. God damn it.
Right.
Yeah, there's a weird dichotomy in what is considered obscene. Like, showing a penis is off the table. You can show as much man ass as you want and still get your PG-13. But it's also, you're not allowed to talk about female desire. Like, they censor the concept of female sexuality. Like, men can talk about masturbating. This is every Seth Rogen movie ever is about 30 minutes of him talking about how he likes to masturbate. And yeah, but you know, a woman talks about what she likes or how if she masturbates, it's off the table. It's a rated NC-17.
Right.
And then and here we have, like, here is two women in a relationship comforting each other.
Mhm.
And it's not for the male gaze. And it means you have to fight to make it there.
Yeah. Well, fuck the patriarchy, you know?
And also, which is to your point that, like, you have to explain to the queerlings. I have to explain it to myself every once in a while.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking around the internet and they're like, oh, look, a show about a gay teenager. And I'm like, yeah, there's lots of those. Wait, are there? Are there? Because, like, most of my energy and getting mad about what should happen in the world is about, like, okay, we still have to fight bi erasure and trans inclusion and the LGBT and fucking TERFs and racism is coming back. And I'm like, oh wait,
I mean,
this
we
fight,
still
I
get
thought
basic.
we won.
We have
I thought we won that fight. What the
we
fuck
have
are we
J.K.
doing?
Rowling 10 years ago being like, Albus Dumbledore is gay. And in the movie that's coming out about young Albus Dumbledore, they're like, well, I mean, y'all know he's gay because she said it's fine.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do anything with that. It's still basic.
Oh, yeah, well, that's because it's illegal to show in China and Russia if there's a gay character, and, like, there's a lot of money there, so...
Oh, brother.
I mean, that's their justification, because you guys remember a couple years ago, I think it was when Sony's emails got hacked?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's just really weird racism, like, disguised with, well, that's not how markets work. It's like, oh, Chinese, it's apparently they were considering Denzel for another movie, and they were like, we can't Denzel, he's black, he won't sell in China. And I'm like,
yeah,
well, it's a lot of white people you're putting in front of China, and they don't seem to have a problem with that. So what's going on here? So yeah, I don't know if I buy that explanation, but that's the official explanation on why it's
I mean,
straight-washed.
anti-black racism in Asian communities is enormous.
I mean, it's there, but does that mean people won't? Your movie won't do well? I'm not convinced of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I feel like we should start using that for our excuse for anything we don't want to do. It's like you're supposed to go to the dentist. I'm sorry, I can't. It won't sell in China.
Doing the dishes is illegal in Russia.
Yeah, exactly. Anything you don't want to do, it's like, that's not going to sell in China.
It's market forces, man. There's nothing I can do about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Take the trash out? No.
Yeah, so Tara also has a scene with Buffy, which I've been I don't know if you listen, Natasha, but I've been very vocal on how angry I am that Tara is sidelined and has no friends of her own and no real story of her own. Mm-hmm. But this was an effective use of her. In that, I immediately thought Tara is the only person in the room other than Giles who's lost a parent.
And we don't even know about Giles.
Yeah, or Anya. Well, clearly she's lost her parents, but
did she care?
That was several lifetimes ago. And it's like there was a moment with Anya where she says, "I wish she wasn't dead," and I'm like, "Are you trying to summon a vengeance demon?"
Well, she knows the power of wishes. I figure she might as well give it a try.
I thought Anya would never say the words "I wish" unless she'd thought it through and had a reason. So,
yeah, that's an interesting point. But like the scene with Tara, I really enjoy when Buffy asks her, "Was it sudden?" and she says no, and then, but yes, it's always sudden,
right?
Yeah,
which I really like. Whether or not somebody has been sick for a while. You never know when that's going to happen. It's just estimations at best, you know? And
even if you know, it's not... I mean, I'm going to plug another property here, but have either of you ever listened to Julia Sweeney?
Only when you've played it for me.
She did It's Pat, and she did a one-woman show called God Said Ha, about how she and her brother both got cancer, and they made he got it a lot worse than she did, and she just gets to this point where they're unplugging him and he's slowly shutting down. And that's I feel like what Tara was saying is that you know exactly the date and time and the hour when this is going to happen, and it still hits you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually had that with my grandmother a couple years ago. She was old. She had been in a care facility for a minute because she broke a hip and was trying to recover and shit. And things happened and she went into a coma, and they told us, okay, she's not coming back from this. This is pretty much it. So we had to decide, okay, when do we unplug her? And it was, again, super surreal in that way that death is, where we're trying to figure this out. So eventually we do come to a decision, okay, we can all be here on Sunday. We're all going to stand around and be with Grandma when she goes. And the thing is, she took so long once we unplugged her that eventually a lot of the people that were there, because I've got a huge family, guys. I've got a huge fucking family. And eventually some of us had to go home. And even though I was waiting for the text, even though I knew it was gonna be that night, it was still so sudden. I had been at the hospital all day waiting for her to die, holding her hand, and it was still not enough time. It was such a surprise, and it still hit me like a goddamn train.
Mm-hmm.
It's always sudden, even when you know it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like, death sucks, guys. Why is this a thing? Like, who decided that this was a gameplay feature?
It's stupid and mortal, and I don't understand why she can't just get back into her body and stop being dead.
Anya had it. She really did.
And she's upset because nobody will explain why, and Willow finally has to be like, because we don't know. And you keep asking, and it's annoying me because I don't know. And you keep reminding me that I don't know why. And I don't want to remember that I don't know why. Because I'm already upset. And thinking about the mysteries of the universe at large is way more than I'm interested in right now.
But Willow managed to, like, put that away once she realized that Anya legit was having a crisis and not trying to be rude.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get that question again. Because the episode ends with Dawn finally seeing Joyce on the slab because she pulled the sheet off her. And Buffy saying that's not her, she's gone. And Dawn just says, where'd she go?
Dawn's, I think the most affecting scene, other than, like, the beginning with Buffy, was seeing Dawn in the bathroom and just seeing her process these world-ending things when you're in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, someone said something about you and everyone's going to laugh at you.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember how world-encompassing all that shit feels.
Yeah.
And then her sister comes in and fucking embarrasses her. It's like, fuck you, I'm in class, stop, you're not my mom, go away.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And then not really believing her.
Yeah, because this is...
I thought that the camera pulling out from behind the window so that we saw it the way everyone else saw it was a really smart move.
Yeah, that was pro.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't need to hear Dawn act. If we just see her collapse like that, that's way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what this episode does. It's like there's no music, there's no... we laughed when Doyle died about like what would Doyle or what would the Red Wedding look like if it was filmed in the 90s with
Oh my god.
if they did a slow-mo as Rob got shot and then it did a like montage of him and his wife getting married and everything and how fucking ridiculous that would be.
Yeah.
Like this is like going extremely the opposite direction. Here's a thing that happened and there's no music, there's no subtle sound effects. There's not even really any cinematography telling you how you're supposed to feel.
Right.
Yeah, he's not trying to manipulate you at all. He's just like, oh, you're just going to sit in this.
Speaking of, who directed this episode?
Let me go to Joss.
The Imdibs.
Joss, and who wrote it?
Mhm.
Joss.
Okay. So I was kind of hoping it wasn't
had lost
him.
his mom. He had lost his mom like a little bit before this, I think, and so a lot of what is in this episode was inspired by his experience and feelings of like dealing with the mundane shit after a life-changing moment like that.
I was kind of hoping it wasn't him, just because since we've learned he's trash, and like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a really excellent hour of television, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really affecting, and I'm. Yeah. Hey guys, because of the time skip, I'm going to be in a very different mood next week for you guys, which was 12 hours ago for us, because we're doing these out of order.
How weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
But it's an Angel episode, so who cares?
And it's an entirely forgettable Angel episode.
Spoilers, guys. No, but like they really resist it. I don't know. We've seen more than one person come back to life. We've seen Joyce brought back from the brink of death in other ways, like being hypnotized and shit.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Joyce having her blood sucked, and I really expected someone to try and go the supernatural route, and what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, with Angel and Darla, death has been cheap. And that's not how it is here. Death is super heavy.
Yeah.
And it's very real. So I did not think the show had it in it. Because I've said I love the show when it's having fun and it's being silly and understanding what it is. And I don't like it when it's trying to be heavy and epic. But here, like, this works. And it works in all the wrong ways because I'm fucking devastated. So,
Sorry, sweetie.
It's epic in like a real human sort of way instead of a supernatural epic sort of way. And by epic, I just mean enormous life-shifting shit.
yeah.
Yeah, the thing where people use epic in place of awesome makes me angry.
I never do that. Epic means like it's got a really big scope and it's really grand and is trying to tell a bigger story. So it's like, I don't understand people say like, yeah, that was an epic meal or an epic weekend. I'm like, no, it fucking wasn't. You went to fucking Vegas. Shut the fuck up.
I feel like there's something that we missed.
What's it?
I'm trying to think.
I mean, we haven't talked
Maybe
about
not.
Giles.
Giles was barely in it, and he was just competent guy.
We haven't talked about her fantasizing that things are okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Oh my god. You've got this bubble of hope inside you that just like, if I wait just another second, she's gonna breathe and it's gonna be okay. If I just hope hard enough, if I activate the prayer thing in my brain that like sends a psychic message to God, she's just gonna breathe and it's gonna be fine, and everything just, why isn't she doing it? Too many seconds have passed now. It could still happen, but it doesn't. And yeah, you run through all these like little micro scenarios that are so fast you don't even know that you're wishing for it. And yeah, but then when it doesn't happen, you're kind of disappointed all over again. It's really fucked up. I have had those things.
Yeah, there's the moment when they're trying to resuscitate her where she imagines that it's all gone okay and they've saved her. And then there's the moment when she's talking to the doctor later, and he says, even if you had been right by her side, there really isn't anything that you could have done. And that's one of those things that, like, they probably intend for that to be comforting so that you're not constantly thinking, if only I'd come home 5 minutes earlier, it would be fine. Mm-hmm. But it also robs you of feeling like you had any control whatsoever over the situation.
Yeah.
And knowing that no matter what, this was going to end exactly this way is in some ways worse. So, you know, I never really know what I would rather hear in that kind of scenario. Because my father, he died of a heart attack. And my stepmom, she woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 4:00 in the morning and he was choking. Mm-hmm. And, you know, once the paramedics got there, he was still alive and breathing, but it didn't look good. He had turned blue. Right. And I'm sure that she thinks if she had woken up sooner and heard him sooner, that she could have saved him. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
But if I were in her shoes, I really don't know what I'd rather hear.
Yeah, I feel that.
You know? And as the doctor tells her, too, like, she didn't suffer any pain. Right. You get the overlay of, I'm lying so that you feel better.
Yeah. And we all think that one, too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It was over so quick. I didn't even ask that one because I knew there was no good answer.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so I think it's time for some plugs. Natasha, our guest, tell us what's going on in your world.
What shall I plug? Well, Maggie and I just restarted Legion Season 2, which is the weirdest show ever made. And I've watched Twin Peaks recently.
Ooh.
So, what's that?
Ooh.
Yeah, this season, I had to, like, push Owen to watch the second episode of Season 2 because the first one, he got, like, mad. And was just like, no, fuck this. I don't even know what they're doing. It's like gibberish just for the sake of it. And I had to be like, alright, just try one more. So we'll see how that goes, but it's certainly compelling. And, we are reaching the last couple of chapters of Goblet of Fire, which is a patrons only show for all patrons, $1 and up. And once we're done with Goblet of Fire, we're taking a break to cover Westworld Season 2.
Oh, yes.
So,
also, bitches and carbs you guys have to watch this when you're done with Drag Race.
We will. I've been wanting to watch it, and you haven't been letting me.
Have you watched the first season, or is this just all new?
I am a virgin.
It's something.
Okay.
That show is, that's a, one of them shows that you're just like, welp, I can't tell you literally anything, but put that in your brain.
Also, Michael Crichton really doesn't like theme parks.
Michael Crichton just has a very low opinion of, like, humanity overall.
Although we can't really blame him for this one because he was dead for 10 years before it became a thing, so.
It's a movie, though. They made a movie of this.
I need to watch that movie.
My dad was
very
telling
different.
me about it.
It's very different.
Yeah, I told my dad about this show, and he's like, there was a movie with that guy. Who was he? You know, the King of Siam. Yul Brynner? Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, there's a character that Owen thought, because he's seen, like, parts of that movie, and he was like, oh, I think that guy's this guy from... And I was like, no, that's not how this is.
Completely different.
Stop trying to figure things out. And I had to really push him to get to watch the first season. And once we were done, he was like, so when do you start the second season? I was like, in about a month and change. And he's like, well, that's fucking unacceptable. So,
I'm glad I'm not the only one who gets responses like that shit. Oh my God. I swear to God, girlfriend's gonna kill me if I do another show.
I'm trying to think what else is going on right now because we're wrapping up on Dark Tower. Next week we're recording the last episode or the last official chapter of the book, and then there's like 2 epilogues. So that will be wrapping up.
Stephen King,
soon.
learn to fucking count.
Oh,
Good God.
Stephen King just overcomplicates everything.
Okay, Natasha, did you know that there is an addendum to the Dark Tower series with a whole nother book called Wind in the Keyhole that takes place...
Wind through the keyhole. Yes.
Okay, good. You know about that. Thank God. I read that without finishing the series because I was a little bit obsessed with that series in my middle school years, but it only went up to book 4 then. So I was saved from the
You're
horror.
lucky.
Yeah, I tried to read it later and I agree. I literally threw the book across the room when that thing happens. And it could be lots of things. And yeah, so then I just IMDb'd I Wikipedia'd the rest of the series because I couldn't make myself suffer like that anymore. But yeah, there's a lot around the Dark Tower series other than just the books. It really does tie into every single other thing he's ever written.
Which is part of my problem with it.
Yeah. It's he tries to use it as a grand unifying theory, and it's just bullshit.
I've never shut up about how much I hate multiverses as a writing tool because it's such a fucking cheat device. Because you can do anything, and there are no rules.
It feels like, and if you guys listen to the show, you'll hear me say this, but it really feels like certain things straight up don't make sense if you're only reading this series. And that's no way to write a series.
Right.
People shouldn't be obligated to go and find everything else that you wrote for something to make sense in the main series that you're writing.
Right.
Easter eggs and stuff like that, that's fine. But that's not how this is done. And, it's only really acknowledged whenever he needs a like weird backdoor that he can fix something really easily or make something appear, it's just anyway. So yeah, we're going to do Wind Through the Keyhole, but we're going to do it in only 4 episodes and cover it in big sections because
I actually liked it
frankly,
a lot.
I'm ready for this fucking series to be over. And I'm really Miles and I started covering this with him being the spoiled one, but I use spoiled in quotes because he had only read the first 4.5 books by the time we started. And I'm kind of glad now because a lot of people said they wished that he had finished it so that he would ask certain questions as we were going. But Miles is so angry that
he wouldn't have even
that if
done
he had finished it, I don't think he could have hidden his contempt and anger about some things when I was reading some of the earlier books.
Bitches, I get very strong John vibes from Miles. John Wigglesworth.
Yeah.
Wigglesworth?
A friend of ours from college.
Yeah, that's his actual
amazing.
name. I had to see his license to believe him. Anyway, but yeah, it's that series is it starts so good, and it middles.
All right, guys.
The first 3 books are awesome.
Yeah, back to Buffy. Natasha,
and also back to plugs because Natasha has a YouTube's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this is a thing. I was really not feeling well last week, so I didn't do one, but I'm doing a new one this week. And my YouTube is Bossy Fat Babe.
Hot.
And I'm talking about plus size everything. What it's like to shop and try and cosplay and find makeup and just exist in the world. And it's like an interesting project for me because I'm trying to be body positive at the same time as I personally am trying to lose weight. And I find it really tough in the body positive community because there can be this line drawn in the sand that if you are trying to lose weight, then you are not part of the body positive movement, which I think is garbage. But, so I try and warn people about that because I know that can be triggering for some people. And so I had started a whole other Instagram for that so that people didn't see it in my feed and that kind of thing. But yeah, this week, I'm going to be talking about the various solutions to chub rub because I have tried nigh everything. And,
do you know what
I have
mine
some
is?
opinions on what works. What's that?
Boxer briefs.
Well, that's one of the lady options is,
yeah, but they don't have real, thigh legs, do they? They come.
No, yeah, they do. They make them. They're called skimmies. And, there's those, and then there's ones that are like lace, and then there's ones that are like the ones that I prefer, which are part long, like part short, part compression, which are what I prefer.
So
but then there's also
pantaloons make fucking sense.
It's honestly like how women went without wearing pants for as long as they did. I just don't know. It must just have been sweat. Sweat was the answer. No chubra because you're just sodden at all times, which sounds great and not uncomfortable and horrible at all.
I can't wait for your next episode then. I'm a couple behind. Anyway, so I think we've all grieved enough today.
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat something fattening and celebrate life.
Okay, I'm going to go have some carbs, and Natasha, hey guys, it's belated, but happy 4th, or happy Civil War Day,
yeah.
apparently.
Yeah, happy
right.
Second Civil War. That's where I'm at this year.
All right, so let's say goodbye to how depressed is Jeff today?
Oh man, Jeff has a lot going on today.
Do you know about Jeff, Natasha?
No.
Jeff is the NSA intern, or he's not an intern anymore, but he wanted to get into musical theater, but he's still at the NSA like 15 years later, and he got this job out of college, and now it's his job to listen to our Skype calls. So we always try to give him a little, we feel you, Jeff. Yeah. It's never too late, even though you're like 40.
Follow your dreams, and you can choreographer at any age.
He's sitting at the switchboard crying uncontrollably and nobody understands what's happening.
We give him a lot of shout-outs.
It's Joyce! They're like, what?
Who's Joyce? Run a cross-check on that. All right, guys. Let's say goodbye.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Bye!
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.